I didn't know this world existed. I have been coming to the Jersey Shore for 70 years and never realized there was a richer world off the islands. This is a world where change has come slowly, and people who choose can live close to the land as their ancestors had for hundreds of years. With a hatchet in hand and an iPhone in their back pocket, they still manage to live simply.
I think a lot of people today have such a disconnect from nature, a disconnect from where food comes from. A lot of the early settlers, they lived on ducks and geese.
5 years ago, I stumbled into this simpler life when I went out to Goshen Farm to interview J.P. Hand for a documentary film. When Jamie invited me into the kitchen of his old farmhouse, I met his wife and fellow historian, Gwen Raring. They drew me into a world that appealed to my reverence for the past, a world I didn't know still existed. I met self-reliant men and women who know how to work with their hands and hearts. Together, we decided to visit some of these craftsmen, document their workshops, their work, and their thoughts. Our odyssey and the idea for our movie began at a get-together at Pete Peterson's place down on the eastern shore of Virginia, where we met carvers and collectors from up and down the East Coast. In our travels up north, we interviewed Bob White, George Strunk, Bob Biddle, David Rhodes, Harry Shores III, and J.P. Hand. Down on the eastern shore of Virginia, we met with Cameron McIntyre, Grayson Chesser, Kenny Marshall, Pete Peterson, and finally Jerry Taunton from coastal Carolina. Come with us and meet people who have dedicated their lives to the American folk art of decoy making.
This was art and hunting together. And the first art was basically sporting art in a way, because it was the cave paintings that early men were using to depict the animals they hunted and their experiences. And
too, that a decoy is like a symbol of the hunt, of the quarry. Like cavemen making all their, cave paintings, a tribute to nature. And it'll look good in the house, it'll look good in the water, or it works, and there are not many things like that.
It has been said that decoy making is a true American folk art. European settlers in America began hunting ducks, geese, and shorebirds in the early 1600s. Just when East Coast hunters began carving wooden decoys to attract waterfowl is unknown. But by the 1850s, contemporary newspaper accounts began to report the use of carved wooden decoys.
For generations, wooden decoys were used for one purpose only, and that was to track wildfowl into a gunner's range. By the early 1900s, decoys started being looked at in a different light, as a folk art that deserved to be collected, studied, and appreciated away from the marsh, away from the duck blind or the sneak bucks.
It was after World War I that decoys began to be collected and prized as folk art. Some working decoys that originally sold for a modest price are now selling for the price of a house. The old-time carvers would be astounded at the prices their tools can bring today. As a person who has spent a fair amount of time in my own woodshop, I was fascinated by the workshops that we visited. They were nearly all small, cramped, and richly cluttered, filled with the sounds of work and the smell of cedar shavings. To me, they are places of magic, littered with the evidence of past projects and filled with the awareness of future production.
Well, I'm just not comfortable working in a spotless environment like a hospital or a home. I'm afraid everything I do, I'm going to make a mess and get hollered at and get punched in the nose. Anyway, my ex-wife used to tell me that I love my filth, and she's probably right. Yeah, I don't worry about when the chips fly. Just let them go. Don't worry about it.